This video is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. It's the beginning of summer, time to relax, maybe watch some movies, and listen to your grandpa yell some colorful, outdated language when his identity is stolen online. Well, the internet can be a scary place out there. Surveillance limitations and data mining happen all the time without you even knowing, so, skill issue, grandpa. But with Surfshark VPN, you do have an easy one-for-all solution across many different products as well, Windows, Android, or Apple. With a click of a button, Surfshark turns you into an anonymous and hard-to-track user, giving you more freedom on the internet, keeps you away from prying eyes, and prevents companies from doing things like geo-blocking or video and streaming services limit your library simply because of where you live. But with Surfshark, that's all a non-issue. You start up their service, choose your location, refresh the page, and there you go, your favorite show that you couldn't watch before because you dared to live somewhere else, you idiot. And those that use the link in the description below and enter the special code Johnny will not only get 83% off their initial order, but the next 3 months are also completely free. You hear that, grandpa? Free, you absolute cheapskate. But thanks to Surfshark VPN for the sponsor once more. Now let's continue on with the show. Alright, so sadly this is going to be the last video I do for this small donation bit I have for about 2 months now, because catching COVID really did set me back a couple of weeks, and I really want to begin my summer plans beginning this July. But as always, as a gag or otherwise, I appreciate anyone who's ever graciously donated a game to me. Honestly, I just appreciate the thought. However, I had a bit of a hurdle with this game, Voodoo Vince. I don't remember who gifted me this game, there's no name on the back, but this game wasn't backwards compatible with the Xbox 360, and I don't have an OG Xbox. But thankfully, a quick Google search led me to the game's 2017 remaster on Xbox One and Steam. Excellent, the dream lives on. So without further ado, let's get started. Voodoo Vince. Not that I should judge books by their cover, but when you look at a game and you can just smell the era it was released in. I'm looking at this thing and all I could think of was games like Blinks the Cat, Fur Fighters, Vex, to bring that game up again. The 6th generation was a time where all kinds of genres were continuing their push, or maybe at this point they were being overexposed, and I think it's safe to say that the platformer, especially by the tail end of the PS2 era, was starting to lose some of its general appeal. Voodoo Vince is one of many platformers I had no idea was even a thing until it was donated to me. The one and only console game developed by Beep Industries, now known as Beep Games. And they're still a thing according to their website, and from what I looked up, they're still releasing smaller projects for the PC and mobile devices. So this is their only console game, huh? Okay, well, is it a 6th generation statistic, or is it a hidden gem? I'm gonna lean towards hidden gem, but it's a soft lean. I wouldn't call this game amazing. From the beginning though, Voodoo Vince stars the titular Vince, a voodoo doll belonging to Madame Charmaine, a woman dedicated to helping others with her self-owned voodoo shop. However, one disgruntled man known as Cosmo the Inscrutable uses his hired goons to break into her house one night to steal her zombie dust, a potent concoction that can warp reality itself. In the middle of the break-in, Madame Charmaine is knocked unconscious and is taken along with the zombie dust.
There is great danger of...
But a bit of it manages to get inside Vince, bringing him to life. And thanks to their souls being linked, or something like that, I'm not terribly familiar with the rules of voodoo, I just know that it produced 8 Chucky movies and a TV series, Madame Charmaine is able to telepathically communicate with Vince, and tell him that it's up to him to rescue her and stop Cosmo from using the zombie dust and wreaking havoc across New Orleans. Oh yeah, the whole game is brimming with that southern New Orleans vibe. And I'll go out and say that it's the best thing about this game? Yeah, I think I can get away with saying that. I mean, the environments are not much special. Hell, I even think that for a game that taps into that Louisiana culture, it's not colorful enough. But the game's not muted. Plenty of purples, yellows, and greens splash through every environment, which I'll take any day over brown and gray funeral marches. I guess it's just, when I think Louisiana, when I think New Orleans specifically, my mind immediately gravitates towards, Mardi Gras, the festivities that come with that. And I don't think this game is as visually spectacular as it could have been, if that makes any sense, though I realize Louisiana is more than just New Orleans, and my viewpoint suffers from cultural ignorance. Audio-wise though, it is fantastic. Lots of New Orleans jazz swimming through this game's soundtrack, and sometimes it's not very energetic, not even very melody-driven, and it can come across as lounge music more than anything. But these compositions meant my toes were always tapping, my head was always bopping. It is a great soundtrack that complements the game very well. I want to compliment some of the character designs too. The creatures you face and most of the bosses are nothing to write home about, and some of the NPCs are cut from a generic cloth, but Cosmo and his goons, Madame Charmaine, I'm reminded a lot of Muppets, and I like that about them. I don't think you saw this sort of character design a lot around this time, so immediately I think it sets it apart. I love Vince's design too. It's not every day where I get to control a voodoo doll of all things. But maybe I'm in the minority here. I don't think it was the best decision to have him as a wisecracking, dry smartass. I thought for real he was gonna be mute because he doesn't say anything for like a minute or two after being brought to life, and I thought he was gonna be one of those characters who spoke through pantomiming expression. He was certainly expressive enough, it's my favorite thing about Vince visually. But then he just starts talking and he's right out of a Dorkly parody. It's like if Gex had a sequel like 20 years later and he was just done with this shit.
Only a gifted inventor like me can grasp the theories involved.
You're building a balloon.
Yeah.
Looks like you need some cloth for the balloon, a propeller to steer it, and some gas for the burner.
Yeah.
I'm on it. See you later. And while I'm gone, why don't you invent some breath mints?
Most of Vince's dialogue is him poking fun at traditional platformer tropes, the need to collect things to progress, how everyone could be a real asshole, how he's the only one who can save this sort of day bullshit. I'm sure you know exactly the kind of character Vince is, and I want to make it clear, it's not to an obnoxious degree. And I even laughed at the bit when he's thrown out of the balloon and he's cursing up a storm, but that was like the only time I genuinely laughed at the writing. Most of his quips didn't land for me. For one thing, it's outright said that before Vince was given life, he was just a regular voodoo doll. So for him to suddenly have life and act as if he's done this song and dance before seems strange, like unearned. And I know it really ain't that deep, I'm aware, but that's why most of his jaded quips don't work for me, because it doesn't come from a place of familiarity. I mean, I'm familiar with them, and that's probably the point. It just doesn't make much sense to me with Vince acting as the vehicle driving these points home. But outside of Vince's retorts, this game revels in macabre and the occasional gross-out humor, even getting a gratuitous fart joke for no fucking reason in one of the game's cutscenes. Environmental design reeks of the same flavor. It's the entire joke of the carnival, the final level of the game. Poor kid never stood a chance. Nothing Adult Swim caliber. I would say it's on a similar level to Medieval, but it is darker than your average platformer, and it can be fun in a devious way. The voodoo powers alone, my god, enemies can suffer death in all manners of ways, getting stabbed with needles, getting bisected vertically and horizontally, complete with Mortal Kombat-esque gore. Some even shit themselves to death. Vince harming himself to harm others is the real crux of how you're dealing with most things. It's really what sets it apart from other games that I've played. You know, it's not a matter of finding a weak point and attacking it. How can you fuck up Vince to torture the bad guy? I found that refreshing. Really, there's a lot to enjoy with Voodoo Vince's style and presentation. The real meat and potatoes of the game is, unfortunately, or fortunately depending on what you're looking for in 2022, is a very by-the-numbers platformer. Despite the market around this time, and were collectathons still popular in 2003? Voodoo Vince isn't a collectathon per se, it's more objective based. There are things to collect, like dust powder to permanently extend your health after getting enough of it, skull pages that add another notch to your voodoo spells when you collect enough of them, and then you chase down this purple skull for a bit. Then there's these purple totem poles that give Vince another flavor of his voodoo screen nuke. I'll get to that in a second. These things are all optional though. There is no prerequisite amount of dust bottles, pages, or totems you need to collect to get to the next area. To get from one stage to the next here, you just have to complete the current objective, which doesn't always involve collecting things. Sometimes it's you exploding a set of gas pumps because they're in the way and they're jerks. Sometimes it's leading a gas canister through a series of elevators because you can't jump while holding the thing, and falling even an inch will cause the canister to explode. Sometimes it's catching fireflies with a net and using light beacons to open the door to the boss. And other times you'll be in a completely different vehicle, which I'm happy to say all controls surprisingly well. This airplane is pretty speedy and the turning is ultra responsive. I could have gone without the weird angle turning with the right trigger, but that isn't too intrusive. Hell, the boat in the bayou was fun to speed through with, and I enjoyed the race against Crawdad Jimmy. Didn't like how I came to a complete stop just by rubbing against a fucking twig though. I don't even know if this is the intended effect because holy fuck, what a clunky obstacle if that's the case. The rest of the game is standard point A to point B, which I feel only gets more tedious as you progress, some level design even feeling pretty directionless towards the end of the game, with little reward to reap outside of the occasional extra life and dust bottles, which I feel loses meaning after a bit. And Vince himself doesn't see much in expanding his arsenal of attacks, so he can hover off of the ground for a bit, as I'm sure most voodoo dolls can do. Great for correcting jumps, so it's appreciated anyway. He has a double jump, and that off the bat is always a great thing. It's the Crash 3 double jump though, and if you don't remember, it's the sort of double jump that only works as you're ascending during your first jump. Once you start descending, you can't make the second jump, and yes, this has led me to a few deaths. And speaking of Crash Bandicoot, Vince also has a spin attack, ripped wholesale from that series. But he also has a standard 1-2-3 melee combo and a ground pound that never sees any change or upgrades and doesn't get used often, if at all, because the last of Vince's moves is a Voodoo Attack that will instantly kill any enemy in the vicinity. You need to have at least one Voodoo Skull to trigger it, which you fill by collecting these colorful beads that enemies drop when they're damaged. But every time you kill an enemy with a Voodoo spell, guess what? They drop a shitload of beads, which fills your mana right back up for another Voodoo Attack. Shit, maybe even a second or third one if you expanded your skulls with enough skull pages. Most of your time in combat in Voodoo Vince is just spamming Voodoo Attacks. It is such a crutch. It is so easy to become complacent with it given how easy it is to execute. This is even assuming you're fighting at all, which I gotta say I started giving less of a shit about when I realized there's no real point to it outside of the few times it's necessary to continue on. And even then, what? I just hit a button and boop, the way is open, lickety split, same way every single time. And Vince never sees any other upgrades outside of what he already has in the beginning, except for what? The all-seeing eye that's used, I think, only once in the area you get it, and there's a grappling hook later that, to be fair, does actually get its use later on, especially in the final area where it just fucking makes you spam that shit. Voodoo Vince is only about 7 to 8 hours long, so it's not as if there'd be much time to spend on flaunting upgrades, whatever shape they decide to take, but I think the game still could have used 1 or 2 more to freshen things up. All those purple totems you collect lets Vince perform a different kind of Voodoo Attack, but in essence, it's still a screen nuke. It's just with one he runs around with scissors, and with another he shits his guts out in an outhouse. A different flavor to be sure, but with the same outcome every time. Most of the platforming challenges in Voodoo Vince are solid, with some even being surprisingly challenging for both the right and wrong reasons. The level architecture can be a little too chaotic. Warped buildings and platformers make for great environments, but when you actually gotta jump on and off the things, sometimes you make the landing, sometimes you just slip off. Sometimes Vince will just clumsily grab the ledge before I can even make a jump. One time I even saw myself clipping through the geometry in the final level and I had to reset the game because I couldn't escape. One of Cosmo's diabolical traps, I'm sure. Didn't even need voodoo powers for that one either, what the fuck. The game has a live system, but it's more of a formality than anything. Even should you lose your last life, you can just load the game's checkpoint from the title screen and pick up right where you left off. This kind of makes the extra lives meaningless, and those bits where you have to go out of your way to find them loses some significance. But collecting one also restores your life to max, so multi-purpose collectible, I can dig that. You know, seeing a number go up is always a good feeling. It's good to have a bit of a buffer with some of these levels, make you confident enough to proceed along with the challenge. The Butler chase in the manor reminded me a lot of stages like Matter Splatter Galaxy from Super Mario Galaxy, a stage that I adore, but you do not have much time to waste in this area. You gotta be on this Butler's ass to survive. You stall for 1 second, your ass falls right down. A lot of standard platforming sections can catch you off guard with how erratic they move or how little room for error they leave you. Most of them, however, I found perfectly fine. But I want to say by the manor level, this game was getting pretty tedious with its objectives. Like, it wasn't even about the challenge of the objective, it was the matter of how you went about dealing with it. In the carnival, you need to collect these tokens to get to the next area. One of them just involves you spinning this wheel until it lands in the token spot. Okay, that's luck-based? Or maybe it's set, I don't know, but it's still meandering shit. What am I doing? Hitting a button, hoping it lands in the thing. That's it. There's a set of ingredients you have to get for Crawdad Jimmy in the Bayou Factory, and one of them involves getting a sausage. So what you do is you set these conveyor belts, you place the animals in this contraption, and then you just wait, and wait, and wait, and wait, and wait, and wait, until the thing has fed about 9 animals, and then you gotta do it again when you realize you forgot to set the conveyor back to normal to actually get the fucking sausage. God, this sucked. These eggs in the manor that keep spawning bad guys. So you basically have to do the same exact thing 3 times. Climbing on these bookshelves, this moose head, hitting this switch, getting the dynamite, placing it next to the egg, then getting yourself to a crossbow, launching yourself out of the crossbow, setting yourself on fire to light the dynamite, and then blowing up the egg. You do this 3 times the exact same way, every time. This part in the cemetery where you have to launch out of a cannon to land in this stupidly small hole to the exit, you don't even die if you fuck up, it's just, you gotta go back and try again. I think this took me about 10 minutes. You have to be damn near pixel perfect with this shit. Like stuff like this, all this that I mentioned is almost all the second half of Voodoo Vince, and I wasn't the biggest fan. Again, not challenging, just tedious. I also don't know if this was just a thing for the remaster, but the sound levels are way out of whack. This game can get loud, like really loud, so if you're playing with headphones on, you know, watch yourself. God, the sound mixing for Voodoo Attack's boss fights like the one with Hurricane Hannah where she tosses all this debris at you and it's just louder and louder and louder. And some environmental pieces can overmodulate very easily, and I needed to lower the volume a few times just so that I didn't get ambushed by the sudden spike in decibels. And whoever decided to have these cat rides constantly meow and screech in the carnival level, look, I just want to talk. You know what though? It ain't exactly the most replayable platformer I've played. The quality peters out too much during the second half in my opinion, and really, It's nothing much special altogether after everything I played throughout the years, but Voodoo Vince has just enough personality and wit to warrant a recommendation, I feel. And it's clear the devs had fun making this when they did, if the credits are anything to go by. I don't think $15 is asking for much. Shit, I'd say the soundtrack alone warrants the price, and yeah, you can always YouTube that shit. But I think it enhances the game enough to consider experiencing it wholesale. I don't feel my time was wasted playing this, and especially for donated games, I gotta say, that's a pretty damn important thing to acknowledge. But after finishing the game and looking at my notes and realizing, I got really nothing that much interesting to say even after some, specific bullet points, I realized, a one and done game, but it's not the worst thing in the world I've played. However, we are done with the donated games for the time being because I'm getting ready to start a new marathon, 2 of them at that. And one of them you're going to see premiere at this year's 2-minute game, so I hope you love what I have in store for you guys. Now the other series, you won't be waiting too much longer for that one, I assure you. And this is pretty significant because I feel as if I'm popping a PS2 cherry with the next series I'm covering. I'm finally going to start tackling some Ratchet & Clank games. I initially skipped this series when it was brand new, and now it's finally time to see what I've been missing out on. And based on your guys' recommendations, hopefully I'm in for a good time. I won't be covering all the series at once. I gotta keep you guys coming back for future marathons. It's just how I do things around here, but still. So that's what we have in store for the next couple of months. So with all that said, thank you all for watching. Stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask if you decide to go outside, get vaccinated if it's possible. I almost dropped the fucking game case. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more. Have yourselves a fantastic night, and take care. Just rolls right off the tongue.